Hi everyone, my name is Tan.
I'm Lexy.
And we both form the Spiritual Business Collective. So in these vodcasts, we aim to go deep. We want to answer questions of everything: consciousness, relationships, business, parenting, and everything in between. Yeah, the real stuff that's holding us back. So today I'm extremely excited to be talking to the amazing Lexy about relationships. So Lexy and her husband Shane have been people that I have looked up to in relationships before. What I love about these guys is that they're real though. They know that it takes work, and part of that work is some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, which is projecting in relationships. But before we get to that, I'll just share that I'm very new in conscious relationships learning. So I've done a lot of work in so many other areas of my life, but I was single for 5 years after I had Kiani, and I can tell you I was not in conscious relationships before then. So this is a new learning for me. To walk this journey with someone else. So I'm personally very interested in this topic and how I can get better at this, and how my partner and I can do this better as well. So I might just start with tapering it back a little bit, and if you could just share with us a little bit, Lexy, about you and Shane, and how you guys got to the place, or has it always been the place, of having more of a conscious type of relationship?
So a lot of people probably don't know this, but I was actually in a relationship that was quite toxic when I met Shane. And I still remember the first moment I saw Shane. It wasn't like, love it or anything.
Things didn't come out in violence.
It was like, it wasn't like that. But I do remember feeling drawn to him. Obviously, I've always been quite intuitive. And I felt drawn to him, and I just felt like, there's something about him, like I need to get to know him. And and it was, we kind of spoke. We did the cube. If you don't know, look it up. Did the cube. I did some of his handwriting analysis, and kind of just since that moment, like we connected and just started talking, and we were just friends. Like we were just like, and I'm quite loyal, so I was like, this isn't, I think I said to him, I'm like, we're just friends. Okay, Lexy.
I'm going to deny it to myself for a while.
But I was in a toxic relationship. He was quite full on, the person I was with before, and he had his own healing to go through and everything like that. And there was a point where I realized I can't be in this anymore. So to look, Shane and I dealt with a lot of serious things very early on in our relationship. I mean, I can sit here and say it was very kind of fairy tale type, because in saying that, like emotionally, when we decided, when I split up with my, the ex-partner, and went, I'm going to enter into a relationship with Shane, it did happen really quickly. Like almost like within 2 days, I had, to the point where I was then taking Shane to parties or things that I like that I was going to be taking someone else to. And I remember my family was like, is this person? I'm like, no, this is, and they're like, what is going on? So it did happen quite quick. But I am of the firm belief, and I do know that, everybody goes through relationships differently. And for me, and I think for women know when something's over. Before it's actually over. So I'd already split up there. And so when I then entered into a relationship, I remember Shane saying to me, I think we should just wait. And I'm like, it's fine. I'm like, probably a bit excessive, but I just definitely, we went straight into a relationship. Within a couple of days, we had decided that we were going to live together.
So how do you know that? So were there conversations taking place?
It was, yeah, I feel like it was the conversations we were having. Like, we'd already covered quite a lot of ground in terms of, like, even just within those 2 days, our communication was, like, you know, and I will bang on about this because communication is key.
Yeah.
Like, without communication, I know a lot of people talk about trust and, you know, yes, that's lovely. But if you don't have communication, like, your chances of getting over any kind of obstacle are like next to none.
Yeah.
So we did, like, the conversations we had were about the type of people we wanted to be.
Yes.
Which aligned for both of us. What we wanted in life, like what we valued.
Yeah.
I still stand strong on this. I really feel that if you don't share the same values when you start a relationship, the chances of that relationship thriving, you're going to, no, I'm not saying all the exact same, but the majority, they need to be
the big ones.
The big ones need to be very similar, because you're going to, your actions and everything is going to be dictated by those values, right? By your identity. So we had a lot of those conversations early on about who we wanted to, and I think who we wanted to be was almost the most important. Like, who we are now and who we wanted to be, because that is then where we saw, like, that crystal clear alignment. We were like, we both want the same things. We both want to be these kinds of people that inspire people, that make a difference in the world. And I still remember saying to Shane, having that conversation, going, I want to make a difference in the world. And he's like, how? And I'm like, don't put me on the spot like that. Like, oh my God. But yeah, no, it's, you know, and so it was good. We had, like, really in-depth conversations, and that's what grew it.
So what was that the first time in a relationship, when you're first starting with someone, that you dove deep from the start?
Yeah, from the start. Yeah, it was just like, okay, you know, the ride's going. Buckle in. It did. Everything happened fast. The biggest challenge that we had, quite a lot of challenges. One of the challenges that came up, and I'm just like, oh my God. One of the challenges that came up was everybody, especially, well, I shouldn't say everyone. My family was quite supportive. Shane's family and Shane's mother, like, did question things a lot, which, I mean, at the same time, I can also understand, because she's going, like, this is, like, what's going on. But I do feel like, even with relationships, regardless of you projecting within your own, which we'll get into that in a second. You're also dealing, at the start of your relationship, you're dealing with other people's projection of what your relationship should be.
Oh my gosh. I think all of us can relate to that. I know I certainly can. And in my current relationship.
Exactly. And it's a bigger thing than I think what people are aware of or give credit for. Because not that, like, you know, their opinions shouldn't matter, and everybody can say that and know that. But the reality is that when you have people going, you know, that's BS, you should leave, or, you know, oh, I don't feel like this is right for you, or whatever else. It's like, and I think we've briefly spoken about this before, but it's all that quiet concern. It's all that, like, I'm just concerned for you. And I'm like, you're projecting your fear onto me and not really listening. It's like, actually, like, listen to what I'm saying. And I feel like the biggest thing with that process that I really appreciate from my family, like, my parents have been similar. They've got a rock solid relationship. They love each other so deeply, and similar kind of thing in terms of the crash course with them. They met over a back fence, moved in 2 days later, similar. 2 weeks later, they got engaged. 4 months later, they got married, and they've been together ever since.
That's
they just kind of, it's crazy. So I grew up thinking that was normal.
Because that's what you do.
So a lot of the times in previous relationships, so when you're saying, did you have that conversation when you got deep? I'm like, I didn't have deep conversations with people, but in terms of emotionally, I was all in. You know,
make a decision.
I was like, right, I'm in this. Like, let's see where we go.
To most of the culture these days, like, especially with younger people coming through. There's a lot, like, the ghosting and this other real bullshit. Because how are you supposed to get to know someone? When
you're playing games,
putting up, you know, putting the mask on, like,
exactly. And I think that's, for me, that was something that I was always upfront So, you know, even back in like my Tinder days,
Yeah.
I would say to guys, I'm like, look, I'm looking, if it was like for fun or whatever, if I'm looking for a relationship, I'd be like, this is what I'm after.
Yeah.
And they would be like, oh, you're like a bit, and I'm like, that's what I'm after.
Exactly.
I'm not here to play games. And you know, I would have people where I would sit down, and some people have said to me that, oh, that's cruel. I don't think it's cruel. I feel like it's just being honest, open and upfront. I was never nasty in my delivery, but if I went to go for a coffee with someone and I sat down and I just didn't feel it, I wouldn't even finish the date.
Yeah.
I would actually say to them like, look, I'm really sorry. I'm just not vibing and I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste mine. And they would go,
I would rather that.
What? Like, and I'd have people go, oh my God, like you just got up. And I'm like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
isn't that better than ghosting though?
Yeah.
And then
I'm like,
wondering
just say exactly
what happened.
Exactly. I'm like, to me, that's saving turmoil, you know, but I mean, obviously I digress, but yeah, definitely getting back to the point is Shane and I did have a lot of challenges. We had the challenges around family, which, you know, this, Tanya, and I'm going to be very open and raw right now, but when I'd left my previous partner, I was pregnant and I went through meditation. I went through this whole spiritual experience and I was like, it just didn't feel right. Yeah. Which obviously everybody has their own choices and maybe have a different opinion on that, and that's completely fine. But for me personally, I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Shane, when I met Shane, so obviously as you guys all know, if watching this, I'm quite psychic, I'm very spiritual. Yeah. Shane was Catholic. The funniest part is that this is the funniest part, out of all of the serious conversations we had, that wasn't one of them.
That's so interesting.
I'm like, how did this, because we were just like just talking about a connection and like everything else kind of fell away.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I was like strapped in the ride that he was like, I'm Catholic. And I'm like,
how did that happen?
Yeah. And I was like, that's honestly how it felt. I was like, holy crap, I need to just like chill for a second. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But like I was already so in love that I was like, that's totally fine. You can have whatever, you can express whatever belief you want. Like that makes no difference to me. And he was like, yeah, cool. And anyway, so with the baby, the reason this comes up is because Shane was very anti-abortion or anything. And he was like, so like I said, 2 days in a relationship. Yeah. And he's telling me, just keep the baby and we'll be a family. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, like I'm all for fast. I'm all for fast, but mate, like, and he's like, no, but it's not 2 days. Like, he goes, you know, you've got like 8-7 months or whatever. I'm like, no, 9 months. I was like, no. Yeah. So we went through that. I was actually staying with, because I'd moved out with my ex-partner, I was staying with Shane. I was staying with a friend and then I ended up moving in with Shane. And anyway, his mum, I had this big argument with his mum. I'd also been friends with his sister. And so like in terms of, the reason I'm sharing these challenges is because in terms of me dealing or like experiencing connections with his family, it was very difficult for me. Yeah. So incredibly difficult. I felt judged the whole time. And it wasn't even for the reason that you would think it would be. It was because they said like, oh, you lied to us. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you something that for me is so deeply personal.
Absolutely.
When I don't feel comfortable around you. But I got, you know, they abused me. I had like a lot of nasty messages, not even just got sent to me, but to Shane. Shane actually got involved and told him to back off. It was just, and then the funniest part was, which I've spoken to this about 10 years, is that we were like, you know what? Yeah, we're solid. Like, let's increase our connection, or like increase our awareness of our connection, and make it like a deeper connection. Yeah. So then we did this, but we did this. We didn't just do it as like a full moon thing, which I think I've spoken to you about it. Yeah. We did it as a year thing.
Yeah, great.
And it was very full on because it just brought everything that was out of alignment. To the surface, like not just even around like external stuff, but within ourselves and with each other. And you know, there are times like we did know, like we'd already had a conversation. We're like, yeah, we're gonna get married. we had that early on, like I think it was a couple of weeks in or whatever. We did get engaged quite quickly, and we got married, and we've been together very, like we're both, like, it's like, yeah, we're both very happy, but I think it's because we both understand that we chose each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we still continue to choose each other. We still ask each other on like a bit of a, not a regular basis, but I'd say probably every like 3 months, we're just like, are you still happy with me? Like, is this still something you want?
Which is big, because I don't know many people who do that.
Yeah, it's the first time we did it. It was hard. It was really hard because you're just putting, it's complete vulnerability. You're completely putting yourself out there going, they could turn around and say no. Yeah. And like, where am I at?
I didn't know how to bring this conversation up, but since you asked me.
I've been waiting for this. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard so that first year, I moved back to my back with my parents. Shane moved back down away from his family. And Shane actually got quite, my heart broke for him. He felt so torn, and I never made it that, like, you need to choose. I'm always like, spend time with your family, do whatever. But from a side perspective, that was also hard for me because I was seeing the way that he was getting treated. Yes. And it was breaking his heart. And that was really hard, like really tough for me to deal with, because I'm the kind of person, like, you're very similar. I get very protective, and I'm like, you won't have this. I'm like, back off. So I had to really step back. And when I was stepping back, I'm like, well, I need to kind of look at this situation and start disengaging. And that was really hard for me because of my empathy and my sensitivity. There were things that I know, and I'm like, I can't connect with that. It's not in alignment with me. It's not going to help me. And most of all, if I keep stepping in, it's not helping Shane. Yeah. So he had a rough time when we were living with my parents. My parents, like I said, were incredible. Like, my family was very supportive. My own internal struggle, which Shane already knows this, is that I was like, why do my family love you? And I'm like, I'm getting this, like, so it was a bit tricky. And it was also hard as well because Shane's family wouldn't have those conversations. Like, my family's very open. So if you've pissed them off, they're like, so you did this and I didn't like it. So they're very upfront. And so to deal with a family where you go, oh, is everything okay? Because you can feel it's not. And they go, yeah, everything's fine. I'm like, oh,
but I know it's not.
So that was tricky for us. And a few other challenges. It was like when we got married, when Shane said that he was going to propose to me. Again, his family were like, oh, can we see our divorce papers? Like,
oh my God, so least romantic part of proposals or anything.
It was
least
great.
Fairy tale.
Yeah, it was great. Like, Shane's just like, what? Like, Shane is so amazing in terms of his support. And I feel like that's something that, because we do understand who each of us is, we understand that we're both growing, and we continue to make agreements. I think that's the biggest learning for us, especially this year in our relationship, has been that just because you make an agreement, it doesn't mean that that's like you hold someone to that for the rest of their life. Like, do you get what I mean? So you've got to continuously monitor them. You've got to continuously renegotiate. Exactly. And I feel like a lot of people they just don't focus awareness there. Like, and you would have found the same as well. Like, when you've gone, okay, we want to do these challenges and you have all this stuff coming up. I found that people are happy for you to focus on your relationship when it's happy.
Yes.
But if it's got bumps and rocks and things, they're like, ooh. And, I think the other thing is as well is that, like, talking about those relationships and going, oh, hey, I'm struggling with this, or, like, Shane could be like, oh, Lex has been a bitch, or I've been his asshole, or whatever else. But the awareness is that when we come back together, we're like, well, you need to be almost a little self-deprecating, but you need to be able to look at your own behavior. Oh, yeah. Because most of the time, the reason that I'm reacting is because I either haven't done that for myself, or we've made an agreement, or there's been a lack of communication.
Sure. Yeah. I can totally relate. Yeah. So I want to come back to that for a second. I just want to draw some relevance here to my own situation here. So the reason I'm so proud, first of all, that you shared that vulnerability and the realness is that you're right. Most of us have this idea in our head that it needs to be this fairy tale relationship.
Yeah.
And if it's not the one.
Yeah.
And my experience with that this year was, as I said, first real relationship, 5 years. And it was not a fairy tale relationship.
No, it feels hard.
Yeah, like Rob was marriage breakdown and still working through the toxicity that does come mostly from part of that. His kids did not want him to move on with me, and having this whole year with not being wanted around it, it's really hard.
Yeah,
to have
it's a lot of relationships to manage as well as
absolutely. And I'm a runner as well. I'm kind of like, this is good, I'm out. Bye. So having our conversations this year about holding the space for each other and having that acceptance that it's not always going to be great, but you do have to have those things you're talking about, the communication. You both have to be on the same page of wanting to move forward. And we took a step back too, what you're saying, when you move out. Like, I moved back to my unit for a while, and it's been the most incredible experience because we've been able to reconnect again. So were there moments where you felt at the beginning that you were disconnected from Shane?
So I did find, like, when Shane was having experiencing kind of, emotional troubles with his family and with everything and how it was all working out, I found myself getting quite annoyed with him.
Yes.
Very, very.
I can relate.
Yeah, I got really annoyed. I got really frustrated because I was just like, well, you know what? This is what it is. Like, And when I look back on it, I'm like, I was literally dictating to him and then wondering why it was getting received like that. But in saying that, in my defense as well, is it because I was looking at the situation and I'm like, well, they're behaving like that. It's not good enough. Like, give yourself some space and move on.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard, and not just that, it wasn't just a family aspect of things. It's like, Shane's used to going surfing every day or, doing jiu-jitsu, and where he was living with me, he wasn't able to train with all the guys that he trains with at jiu-jitsu up at the coast. Had to go to a whole new gym. So there was that. Then, the other thing that he kind of sacrificed as well was the surfing. And so with those things, those challenges, when I look back on it now, I'm like, yeah, he really did give a lot.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was just like, do this. Like, what? Like, why are you feeling? Yeah. I'm like, why are you feeling down right now? Like, be happy.
Yeah.
And I found that what was happening was I was projecting my expectation on what I felt on what level I felt he should be at.
Sure.
And then when he wasn't at that level, I was then judging him on that and projecting the judgment, projecting the anger or the frustration at him, when really it's like, well, hang on, we didn't have a conversation about that. He had no idea that, like, I mean, he's going through his own struggles, like he couldn't he's not going to understand.
As you know, I've had that exact experience this year. It's just like, well, I'm at this place. I've upgraded my thoughts.
Upgrade yours.
This is very black and white to me, what needs to happen right now. So why aren't you there? But mind you, how many years of personal development have I done myself? How open are the conversations I have with my girlfriends and stuff like that about this type of stuff compared to what he has had?
Exactly.
And really, he was doing amazing. Considering
everything.
And so all that thing was in place. So I totally, as you know, I've had those moments myself of projection, of judgment, of
and there was a moment where we had a conversation and I'm just like, I don't know, like I got quite upset one day and I'm like, I'm scared that I'm going to leave you behind. Because
I've had that moment.
I moved so quickly through things, and like you said, it is, I do feel like, and I know generalizations, but I do feel like on the whole, it is easier for women to move through those things. And so I moved through those things quite quickly. And I'm like looking back and going, like, what are you, why are you still back there? Like, like I need you, like we agreed, like, and I had to release it.
Yeah.
And it was hard. Like,
yes,
as you would have experienced.
I'm still in that.
It's tough. It's a hard thing to release, but it was just like, you know what? I'm just going to release it. I'm going to trust, because even though like it's a trust and acceptance that every single person is on their own journey, and that they will meet you. Like, you know, if they're meant to be in your life, they will be in your life. And that doesn't mean it needs to be the exact same way, or like with this pretty little bow that you expect it to be.
Yeah.
It means it's like sometimes there's going to be sticks that get in your face, or like, you know, the path's going to be a bit shadowy, and you're going to go, I don't really know. Yeah. It's going to have those moments, but I feel like the more you tune in with yourself, like Shane was meditating, like Shane's always been, like I said, he's always been quite spiritual, like regardless. And now he's a lot more spiritual and kind of Catholic, but just that's out of his own choices. And he meditates, and he's used those tools to really, he was already doing personal development. He'd already done Tony Robbins. He'd already done that stuff. So, you know, I just had to reassure myself that I'm like, at the end of the day, I know who he is. Yeah. I know his soul. Yeah. And this is all just trivial crap.
Yeah, exactly. That human stuff.
Yeah.
Because I feel like most people don't know their partner's soul.
Yeah, it's I feel that a lot of people, I've actually had a couple of clients that have gone, oh, you know, I don't know, like, you know, they wanted kids, and I'm like, how did you not have that conversation?
Yeah,
like,
that's big.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously an obvious one, but you need to really spend, you know, like that honeymoon period where you want to spend time having sex or having fun or whatever, but it's like you need to spend that time getting to know each other. That's what that time is. And then not just that, you continue it. Yeah. So like each week, Shane and I spend quite a bit of time together, and quite a bit of time apart, you know what I mean? Like we do have a healthy balance there. But you know, whether it's like a bit some days on Monday, a bit of Wednesday morning, whether it's Saturday night or Sunday, like we do spend focused quality time together. And we do have conversations about, you know, like we'll still, like, even though we've said, oh, that's what I wanted, it's like, well, things change. And so you need to continuously have those conversations about like, oh, what do you think we should do for our relationship? And I think I've spoken to you about this before, but we have kind of like a relationship goal.
Which is amazing. Like, as soon as you told me that, it made so much sense. And I'm like, well, why don't we do that? Yeah. You know, we're kick-ass business women. Yeah. And, you know, elite in so many areas of our life, but we just leave the relationship stuff for granted.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think like if you kind of do a bit of an assessment of like, if you are having relationship issues, like if you start to do a bit of an assessment of it and you look at where you're spending your time, or like what's on your to-do list, I guarantee you your relationship isn't on there. Yeah. You know what I mean? True. Like your relationship, your time with your partner, any of that stuff, I guarantee it's not going to be on there.
And then we wonder why the connection's not there, and we don't know our partner's soul, and they don't know our triggers and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, but you just haven't put. And so Shane and I change like each week. You know, sometimes we'll change it so it's like it goes over into 2 weeks or things like that, but we generally have a relationship goal. So like our goal for this week specifically is gratitude, is feeling grateful for each other. Beautiful. The last 2 weeks before that was consideration. So where we're considering each other and considering each other's feelings and all that kind of stuff with a little bit more focused intention. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's like, you know, and that's not just me coming up with that stuff. Like Shane will go, oh, you know, when we work on this next week or whatever, I think you're probably a typical guy, like, you know, obviously sex wasn't there, but like, I'm like, to be fair, that is part of connection, so why not throw it in there? But yeah, and so another thing we started doing early on as well, because I asked what we could do, I asked my guides, like I asked what I can do to help us grow. I want to grow our relationship because realistically your soul connection is already there. It's just your awareness shifts so that you can see more of it.
Perfect. Yes, I love how you put that.
Yeah. So with the growth of our relationship, you know, we definitely will go, okay, what can we do in terms of our spiritual connection? And so at night, which we still do this every now and then, it's probably only a couple of times a month now, just because we used to do it like every night, but we lay in bed and we hug, and each one of us thinks of a color or feels a color, and we kind of project it,
Yeah.
and the other person says what it is.
Oh wow.
And
That's
so
beautiful. I love that.
yeah. So we do that to work on not just like, it's like, yes, your intuition a little bit, but it's definitely that intuitive connection.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, but you can
Beautiful.
sense it. And so now, like, I'm at a space, like, you know, so Shane and I are very in tune.
Yes, and I've seen that with you guys.
Yeah. So you just know, like, both of us just know. It's like, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, I've got to do that. Like, we'll just know when one of us needs that support.
Yeah.
And obviously, like I said, communication is still important, but it does help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with regards to people who are just starting out, they've not done any of these things before.
Yeah.
Do you think at any stage of the relationship you can actually both choose? So I'm 20 years in, we've had a pretty toxic relationship.
Yep.
Can we both look at each other and go, okay, let's do this properly? Can we start now?
I feel like in terms of that situation, it's hard because it's a little bit more individualistic, but you at any time can choose something different.
Yeah.
And the biggest hurdle, I think, for people, like if they've been in a long-term relationship like that, is you need to be able to be prepared to completely become newer versions of yourselves.
Yeah.
Where you leave everything behind.
Yeah.
You know, like everything. You know, like, don't get wrong, like Shane and I have had some pretty big like arguments over the years. Like we don't, you know, I'd say probably literally a handful realistically, because we communicate all the time. I have had a few people go, oh, but you know, you need an argument with passion or whatever. And I'm like, no, you don't. It's
exactly.
I can have,
the other things are there.
Yeah, we still have like heated discussions about things we're passionate about, but it doesn't ever escalate to an argument, and we don't. It's like you need to watch how you speak to each other, and that was my biggest thing. It's like you need to make sure that you're not like, are you projecting your feelings onto them and then reacting to that, or can you sense like they're projecting their own fears and insecurities, and you're starting to react? You need to be able to be prepared to look at it and not just like have the awareness, not look at it and go, you did this to me. Yeah. But okay, well, this is us. This is what's going on. What do you feel like we should do to fix it? And I feel like that has made such a massive, like we started doing that very early on in our relationship. Okay. And it made such a big difference, because so many people get in arguments with their partners and go, you did this and you didn't do that, and I can't keep doing this and that kind of stuff. And it's just you versus me, you versus me, you versus me.
It's so true.
And then then you wonder why it then blows up in your face. You're in tears. They crack the shits, and you're just like, how did that happen? Yeah. It's like, you know, you're trying to talk. You're like, I was trying to fix the problem. Yeah. But you weren't trying to fix the problem. You were trying to highlight that the problem's there. And keep going, look at this problem, look at this problem. And it's like, it doesn't.
Lexy. Yeah. It's true. I know, I'm guilty.
Yeah. Oh, I did it. Like, it's, you know, I've done it in our relationship, like, and I've gotten a lot better at being aware. Like now, like I said, at the start, I was doing that and I was just like, why aren't you listening to me? Yeah. I'm like, I look back now, I'm going, oh my God, you crazy person. But
I think it's true. And I think too, a part of it for me is maybe a bit of elitism and arrogance, because I've done so much work on myself. And I know that my partner had not. And so I was taking this approach of, I'm up here and you're down here, and we're not at the same level. Yeah. So, and I know I'm not alone, because a lot of women.
I know heaps of people do that. Yeah. Especially. I did that with Shane at the start. Yeah.
So what are some things that we can do to catch ourselves, or we can reflect on? Because I certainly do not want to come from that position anymore.
So what you need to do is, this is actually from Shane, by the way. This is Shane's little tidbit that he brought in, but he was like, what's the goal of this conversation?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yep. What's the goal?
Is it for me to be right and prove that you're wrong? And okay.
It's pretty simple. Yeah. it's very simplistic, but when Shane said it to me when we first got together, and we were having a bit of an argument about, I can't even remember what, it was something trivial and simplistic, but he turned around and he said to me, because I get almost, I get kind of he calls it lawyer mode. And I get very like, I'm like, did you or did you not? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, boom, and I'm all facts.
These are the facts. This happened at this, and you were wearing this black shirt.
Yeah. I was like, and Shane's just like, Shane's like, God, you like kill, like, you know, you're trying to like prosecute me, like, you know, and I'm like, I'm like, I totally am.
Guilty, yeah.
And he said it to me one day. He's like, well, you know, it's making it hard for us to have conversations because, you know, when we're having a serious conversation about something that you are very passionate about, like you're starting to prosecute me or like think that you're better than me, and that's coming across that way. And I was like, oh my God. He goes, so realistically, he's like, I just want to know, like, what's the goal of this conversation? He's like, because if the goal is for you to hurt me or for you to just keep shining a light on what's wrong, he's like, I don't really want to partake in this conversation.
I'm so going to use that.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
And I remember Shane saying it to me the first time, and I would love to say that I was like, yeah, good point. But I wasn't. I was like, as soon as he said it to me, I was like, you don't get to this conversation.
That's my role.
Yeah, my ego was like, on a roll. I'm like, right, mate. Yeah, so now it's good. It's like, and, you know, if I do have I do give myself a little bit of time. There are things like, you know, obviously Shane does something, I do put things into perspective a lot. So I'm like, does this actually matter?
Yeah, true.
And I'm like, and, you know, like for instance, like he always leaves a dish in the dishcloth in the sink.
Yeah.
Little things like that. But I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like it actually doesn't matter.
Things.
And I know that probably comes across as a little bit morbid, but for me, I'm like, I know that if something happened to him, I would miss that dishcloth in the sink.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would miss that. I don't. He better not watch this.
Yeah, let's cut this bit off.
Yeah, he'll be like, I don't have to put it in. Yeah, but that's what made a big difference.
Yeah.
And when you start going, oh, well, I'm going to pick the time. Like, I need to take some time. You know, for me, I was like, I'm really pissed off about this right now. And my ego, like, I'm too emotional to have a conversation. Like, I'm so attached.
Yeah.
You know? So I'd give myself a moment. And there's been times when we've been driving or something and Shane can feel it. He's just like, what's going on? And
something's
like,
happening.
Yeah. He's like, oh,
something's building.
Or it's the other way around. And he'll go, you know, I'll go, oh, what's going on? And he's like, I just need a minute. He's like, and then we'll talk. And I think that was big for me because before I used to be like, we'll talk about, like, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. Yeah.
Fix it now. Yeah.
I've gotten a lot better at, like, if I ask a question and Shane's like, I don't really have an answer right now, but I'll get back to you. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't just say take that though. It's probably the one word there. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, so when will you get back to me by?
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, I want to know when, because then if he hasn't got back to me, and this is another thing again, because obviously Shane's got busy or myself's got busy before and this has happened, I don't then come in guns blazing being like, you told me you get back to me by this time, blah, blah. I would be like, hey, so have you had a chance to think about that? Yeah. And he was like, oh, no. And I'm like, that's it. Like, obviously if it keeps dragging out, that's different. But generally speaking, I'm a little bit more, I've gotten older in our relationship as well, and it's grown. I've just gotten a lot more understanding that I'm like, you know, at the end of the day, it isn't just you in a relationship, it's two people. And this kind of stuff doesn't just help you in terms of a romantic relationship. It's going to help you with your relationships with your family and your friends and things like that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. Now we've covered so much in this one, and I'm just thinking there's like particular topics I want to expand on separate to this. So is there any final things that you think it's important that we share about projecting? Maybe even from how do we deal with it when people are projecting onto you? Yeah, so the more aware you become of yourself in moments, which does take practice. So whether you do journaling, whether you you know, meditate, whatever formal method it is, the more aware you become of yourself, the easier it is in those moments to be aware that that's not your stuff. Yeah, sure. I get that. Yeah, because if it is your stuff, it's like a lot of the time you'll project that onto your partner when you're not aware. Yeah. And, you know, Shane and I have really gotten to a space now where we call it on each other. Right. Like if I'll say to Shane, I'm like, you're projecting right now, or he'll go, Lexy, you're projecting. Yeah. And and I'll go, can you feel what it is? Yeah.
And there's like, yeah, well, you're projecting your fears or you're projecting your insecurities or your doubts or whatever else it is. And then I kind of use that rather than keeping the argument, we kind of then shift it to then focus on what actually is beneath the surface. Right. And I'll find that in terms of projection, a lot of the time it happens because you don't feel loved or you don't feel understood.
Yes, I remember you saying that to me before.
Yep.
Loved and understood. Two key things.
Yeah. So, and then the next question is, it's like, okay, are you having this conversation with your partner because that's like a ball that they've kind of dropped a little bit in terms of giving in and, you know, contributing to the relationship? Or is it because you haven't done that for yourself?
Yeah.
But it's 100% connected to that. It's like the more aware you become of your feelings of like, okay, how am I feeling today? Like, how do I feel about my partner? How do I feel about my life? I think like when you're asking yourself those questions on a regular kind of basis, it makes it easier.
And someone comes out of the blue and drops something on you that has no relevance to what you've been going through or life experience. You know, okay, this isn't actually about me.
No, and you get a lot better at not even reacting.
Yeah,
because you're like, that's not. It doesn't treat, because the more aware you are, the more aware you become of your triggers.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And don't get me wrong, Shane and I have this thing where like we run headlong in triggers. I'm like, oh, that was a sore point. He's like, oh, and he's like, poke it again. But like, just because we can, so then we can figure out what it's connected to. So
I love that. Now I'm gonna wrap that up. Purely because we're about to run out of battery. I haven't plugged it in.
Too much.
Yeah, but thank you, Lexy.
Yeah,
I honour you as a woman and my partner for doing this and for being so vulnerable.
Yeah.
I believe that when we stand in our truth, that we actually really can help people.
Yeah.
Especially when our truth can be quite painful for us from our past. So thank you. I definitely do love you. And thank you everyone for tapping into this one. This one has so many massive gold nuggets. So if there is something in particular that you would like Lexy or myself to answer, please drop down below and let us know what that is. So until next time.
Yes, love and light. Keep growing.
Thanks, guys. Bye.